There you go.
Been,
Working
doing a
on.
little tasting today. I saw my teeth were a little purple. That's better.
Have you got?
I was
Are you
blending
guys tasting?
red cap.
Are you tasting live right now?
As a matter of fact, yeah, I just sort of finished up working on the 2017 Red Cap Hell Mountain Cab blend. They're also a participant at the LMU event. Do a really small amount, 300, 350 or so cases of a single vineyard Hell Mountain 100% cab.
Wow.
Tom's been one of my best, or is one of my best friends. We've been friends for 20 plus years and making wine for 15 of it. And it just keeps getting better and better as those vines really mature and develop and gain a little bit more comfortability in the soil. They're just killing it.
And the first time I met you and Tom was when you guys when we sat at a table with you at that dinner that they do on Saturday night a few years back.
Yeah, I think it was at probably one of every 5 years they have an anniversary dinner,
Yeah.
and that's when it was.
Yeah.
I was hugely underdressed.
And Rudy, are you guys? I know you're on. I know you're on Instagram. Are you guys on Facebook as well?
We are on Facebook, and we're kind of starting to pay a little bit more attention to it. We get so much more interaction on Instagram, but as far as actual sort of the demographic who's buying wine, those people are more on Facebook. So we're starting to kind of, again, kind of balance those out a little bit. But yeah, we definitely do both. We're on both. We just need to be, again, a little bit more active, I think, on Facebook.
All right. I am because I was just I was able to find it at first. I wasn't it wasn't pulling up for me because I tagged you guys in the post.
Oh, okay.
And what I'll do is I'll tag the wines we're drinking too. So we're drinking this is a 19 Grenache Rosé.
19 Grenache Rosé and a 16 Grenache.
Correct.
That I'm pretty excited about. I mean,
yeah,
not that I'm not enjoying this rosé. I always enjoy some rosé.
Yeah, it keeps anytime I'm putting in the rosé, it keeps wanting to tag one of Segi's friends whose name is Rose. I'm like, no.
I think that's a fan.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to tag a fan. All right, cool. We got it now. So we're about to go live.
So which one of you is in Illinois?
DR's in Illinois.
Oh, okay.
He's frozen again.
Yeah. he looks very confused. It's almost like
I'm in Illinois. I think my Wi-Fi is doing my internet's doing funky things. So.
Well, it's a really good freeze frame, David.
Yeah, you look it's sort of scared, confused. It's a couple different looks all at once. Are we unfrozen?
No, he's still frozen.
Yeah. Now I
There you
see him
go.
moving his head. Are you with us now?
Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
Uh, can you hear us, DR?
Well, it's so funny, when my kids were trying to finish their school years, so much of it was on Zoom, and they had sort of figured out how to like act as if they were frozen and respond with their voice in sort of a stuttered way so that they could just say, "Hey, I'm having Wi-Fi issues. I got a dip," and they would get out and go into class.
That's the way to do it, man.
Oh man.
So let's. I think he's here. So we'll jump into it. We
Okay.
are super excited to be here with Rudy and to talk about the 2019 Grenache Rosé and the 2019 Grenache that we're going to be drinking today. Rudy and I met a few years back at the LMU Wine Classic, which is a wonderful event that Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles puts on. A bunch of different wineries. People come in and they get to taste a few things throughout the course of the day. And the night prior, they have this dinner that everybody sits down to. And Rudy and Tom from Red Cap were at our table. We got to talk, and that's when I was explaining to Rudy about the Napa Valley Jazz Getaway and some of the work that we were already doing up in Napa. So we got to connect. I got to drink the Shady Brook wine. I got to drink the Red Cap wine, both of which Rudy is the winemaker for, which was awesome. And then as I dug a little deeper, found out that he makes his own brand as well, which last year at the LMU Wine Classic, I was fortunate enough to try his Grenache. Was blown away, had to order some on the spot. And when we started doing these, he was definitely one of the folks that I absolutely wanted to have. Rudy is one of the best winemakers in Napa Valley, so it's a real pleasure to have him on here today talking about wine. So Rudy, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for all those kind words. And yeah, it was serendipity that we got to be at the same table. We've been able to collaborate on so many things and share so many fun times and great flavors and meet so many great people together. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had guys. I don't know if I told you, but we had Shady Brook do a VIP event for the jazz festival last year, and not only did Rudy make all the wine, he also made all the food too, because we did a food pairing. And this dude is an unbelievable cook, and did a spread that was unbelievable for, I think we had almost 60 people. So
60
it was
people, yeah.
pretty cool thing. So you can make some badass wine, and you can cook your face off too. So you're a Renaissance man.
It's all about putting those flavors together. I just like to have that all going on. That was a sensational day. That was such a fun crowd, and it was a beautiful day. And I think the food and the wine all came together just fine. And that was a thrill for me.
Yeah, it was cool. So you guys have just now started to open up the past couple days. So have you done any in-person tastings so far?
Yes, we just started last weekend. Nice. Way to go, Segi. We started last weekend, and of course, we're under some restrictions. We're not using all the patio. We have everybody spread out a little bit, and there's a little bit more of a waiting period, and before you get your table, lots of sterilization and cleaning and all that going on, and kind of throwaway menus and a little bit more, unfortunately, a little bit more materials we're going through. But we're just happy to see people out on that patio. It's just such a beautiful setting, and it's such a welcoming environment to relax and enjoy Napa Valley and Napa Valley wines. To have seen that empty for so much of this spring was heart wrenching. So Nice to see some warm bodies out there and feel that the pulse and the heartbeat kind of coming back.
Absolutely. I mean,
Hopefully not too warm. Hopefully like 97, 98 degrees.
That's perfect.
Fever joke.
Well, apparently that darn virus hates it when it's over 80 degrees. So the warmer it is, the better.
so I want to get into, everything that you do, the wines that you make, a little bit of your background and your history too. But I got this glass that's staring at me that I want to put my nose into and talk about, and then we can jump into everything else. So you want to tell us about the Grenache Rosé that we're gonna smell and taste here?
Good. Beautiful color.
Yeah, this was I've been making Grenache from this single vineyard in Rutherford, beautiful place called the McGaw Vineyard. Our first vintage was in 2014, and it was just such an incredible situation how it all came together. So the McGaw family, they are part of the Heritage Vineyard and Scarlet Winery. I had been buying fruit from them, Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet for some other clients I make wine for years. And they had one small little piece of Cabernet that was a little bit in decline, and they were going to tear out these 3 acres and replant. So they made a proposition to some of us existing buyers if we had any ideas of what we might want to diversify with. They were pretty much all Cabernet and Sauvignon Blanc. So we all got together. We had a few beers, and we thought we might suggest to the owners to plant some Grenache for us. And mind you, this little section of Rutherford is really one of the true core hearts of Cabernet Sauvignon country in Napa Valley. I mean, it is surrounded by the Losi Vineyard. Beckstoffer George III is on 2 sides of us. I mean, this is just some really prime dirt. And we proposed Grenache, and they almost fell off their chairs at the idea. I think they were much more thinking Petit Verdot or Cabernet Franc or something still in the Bordeaux family. But when we told them sort of what our plans were for Grenache and how we could plant it, that they would get a little bit more production per acre, farming would be a little bit less expensive, and it would be one of the most unique projects in the Napa Valley. They decided to buy it. So we 3 of us now split it. We all have about an acre. So we all get our 4 or 5 tons or something like that per year. And the other winemakers are fantastic. We have a great time collaborating on how the winemaking is going or how the ripening is going. There's a real community, since we're so unusual right there. And one of the unique things about this vineyard is we have it really untrained. So on all sides of us are these perfect rows of Cabernet, just these solar panels that are consistently and perfectly collecting the sun, with the little string of purple pearls in the same place all the way down. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And then you look at our Grenache, and it looks like a bunch of Sigmund the Sea Monsters, just vines kind of flopping on the ground. No rhyme, no reason. There's no wires, there's no irrigation. It's all dry farmed. I mean, it just looks so silly out there. But we get so much diversity from that lack of consistency. We have some clusters that are in morning sun, some that are in afternoon sun, plenty that are kind of underneath that shade, that umbrella canopy that don't see the sun at all. So you're kind of getting 3 or 4 different ripenesses on the same plant. And, that's how it's done in the Rhone Valley. That's how it's been done in many countries that are successful with Grenache. Spain, Australia, South Africa, France for sure. And it really is that imperfection that makes it so exciting. So, you know, we get some nice true ripened flavors. We get a little bit of some sort of leaner, more acidic flavors. We sort of get it all in the same plant. That was really exciting to the owners to let us go ahead and start this project. Yeah, again, 2011, it was planted. 2014 was our first harvest for Grenache Noir. And then I was a little late to the table, but I started with the Rosé program in 2019. And the way we go about this program is a true, honest Rosé program where it is direct press. So a couple of, or maybe a few weeks, 3.5 or so weeks before we are ready to pick the main harvest, we'll sort of go through and sift through the vines. And if there are a few clusters that kind of haven't quite colored up right, or are maybe a little bit behind in the maturation process, we'll cut those off and harvest those and take those back to the winery. Right into the press it goes, and this beautiful, lovely sort of salmon pinkish juice comes out. It's cold fermented in tank for about half of the process, and then barrel fermented for the rest. And it goes into some French oak barrels, but they're 8, 9, 10 years old. So the barrels really don't have an influence flavor-wise on the wine, but they offer a great space for it to really kind of keep breathing and evolving and changing. And we utilize the leaves like we would with a Sauvignon Blanc or a Semillon or a Chardonnay. So we really get that kind of viscous texture, that really silky, soft note. I think the wine's acid has edges, but this barrel time kind of rounds those edges out ever so slightly to where you still maintain that crisp, vibrant, juicy, you know, kind of young, youthful freshness. But there is also a little bit of charming and a little bit of roundness and a little bit of warmth that comes with it too.
I never would have guessed that this sat in oak barrels off of the nose, because I'm getting a lot of that, getting a decent amount of the minerality on the nose and some grapefruit and maybe like a hint of apricot. But I mean, yeah, I never would have guessed that it sat in oak. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the oak barrels have been around as long as my assistant winemaker. So there's not a whole lot left in them. All of the flavors have sort of been leached out in you know, bigger, heartier wines, and they're kind of just neutral vessels now. So really, for me, it's about kind of forming that viscosity and that texture.
Yeah, I'm getting some white peach on the nose pretty prominently. And I love that this is that it's from Rutherford, because you know, when I think Rutherford, I think cab country.
Absolutely.
You know, so I love the story behind, you know, planting the Grenache on a couple of acres, because you know, I mean, that's just such fertile, you know, cab growing, you know, terroir that that's what you think.
Absolutely. It's absolutely silly that they let us do this.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit more about the pressing. So you're looking for the grapes that, you know, don't have full color, because when you go in and when you press, and I think, you know, for everybody who's watching that doesn't fully understand the process, when you're making a rosé and explaining to people how these wines get their color, and you know, it's the skin of the grape that gives a wine its color. So you know, you're taking things that aren't, you know, bright, fully bright yet, and you're using those to give it the pink color. How long are you leaving the skins in before you take them out? All those kind of things.
Right. So these grapes are fully ripe and mature, but again, with some of those clusters being tucked under that canopy of leaves, without that sun exposure, the skins kind of stay a little bit half green, half purple. So they, you know, when you're harvesting, and they all look like they're purple, but the ones that are on the outsides are really, really dark. And those are the ones that are going to give us some nice color for our next wine. But otherwise, these have completely ripe seeds. the balance between alkalinity and acid and sugar are all there. It's really just a matter of that sun never really hitting these clusters. And there's plenty of these clusters we leave behind for our Grenache Noir also. So these grapes come in and they are not destemmed or sorted. They are, good night, you guys. Thank you. Have a good day. They go directly and they're dumped straight into the press. So there is virtually no skin contact with these for any extended time. The only difference might be is that we use kind of a champagne grape program on the press, which is a very light squeeze, a soft kind of tumbling, so they kind of fluff up a little bit in the press, another light squeeze, and we go through 10 or 12 different cycles of increased pressure to get a little bit more juice out. But, you know, 80% of it is done in the first maybe 25% of those cycles. The rest kind of starts getting a little bit aggressive. And we're just standing right there by, you know, the outlet where the juice is coming from. And as soon as we get a hint of sort of seed bitterness, we just call it off. And the rest goes to the very expensive compost pile.
I see what you mean about the rounding out of the kind of the acidity and everything. You know, with a lot of rosés, I find that there'll be just like a hint of bitterness on the finish. And I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, is that from being in the skins a little too long?
Well, it could be kind of an earlier pick too. I mean, again, we hope to get these seeds ripe. I mean, if you look at, I mean, the alcohol on this is sort of normal. It isn't a 12% or 13% or something that was picked really, really young with very, very underdeveloped and immature seeds. We let these get pretty good and ripe. I mean, I think that I don't get offended by the booziness, but that really is bringing that freshness and that ripeness to this. Where, yeah, some of the other rosés that are picked very, very early can have a little harsh note to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's got a really nice and soft finish, which is, in my opinion, kind of rare for a rosé. This is a very unique rosé, and it's, like you said, the roundness of this in the mouthfeel is really fantastic. It's really great.
Thank you. Well, definitely in and around a lot of my winemaking, for me, mouthfeel and texture is one of the most important things. I'd like to leave sort of what flavor profiles I'm given to Mother Nature and just sort of nurture them. But the wine has to feel balanced. You know, that initial core fruit that hits your palate has to match with the acid. It has to match with tannins, match with the finish. You know, if it's a little too tannic and dry, well, that kind of undoes the other important factors. If you have this big, huge core fruit, but a really too soft of a finish, well, then you sort of left something on the table too. You can sort of like build these, or, you know, either make them conservatively or aggressively to match the fruit. And for me, that is the most, the best challenge, the most exciting challenge of making wine from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, great mouthfeel. I think the word I would use to describe it is just, it's lush. It's a really lush wine. You know, slight minerality, you know, a little dry, which I like. It's just really pleasant, really, really nice. This is, you know, something I want to drink, you know, on a warm day. I would also drink this, you know, in the middle of winter. Segi and I joke around that it's always time for rosé. So, I mean, you know, I would drink this during the winter. I would drink this on a 95-degree day, you know,
Sure.
in the middle of Napa Valley, and love it all day. But I would drink this in January too. It's really, really pleasant, and it's drinking extremely well right now.
Yeah, I definitely think it has enough body to go with plenty of foods too. I mean, it's a great pairing with, you know, cream sauce, maybe shrimp pastas. Goes great with grilled salmon. And we had it with scallops a couple of nights ago too. That was really, really exciting with a little olive oil and kind of lemon juice fennel drizzle. It definitely held its own. I mean, it is dry. It's got a nice big burst of kind of, I think, strawberry kind of flavors right in the middle, and a nice long finish. But yeah, it's not, you know, high school hot tub kind of rosé. This is kind of a real deal.
I think rosé is an underrated wine with food, right? And I think all those things that you mentioned would be great, and particularly with this one, I think this would stand up to, you know, in any fish or or, you know, some chicken on the grill. Even maybe some barbecue, I think, would be good with this.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, like I love the nose, just sort of a little bit floral, getting that grapefruit too. And then I say sweetness, but I think a lot of times when you say sweetness, it's almost negative. But I'm not a sugar person. I'm more of a savory. So when I say that there's just a little sweetness in this, I mean that in just with the most respect, and I mean it in a good way. Just a hint of sweetness, and then it finishes clean, which is really interesting.
I think that is important for that clean finish, and yeah, I mean, it is a very rich wine. You know, again, it's not super lean, so that sweetness, richness is definitely part of the whole the whole of the wine. And again, I think that adds to the diversity and the user friendliness of this wine. And you know, the only issue we've ever had with it is that the bottle's just too damn small.
I was just gonna say,
I think there's a hole in this one.
Yeah.
because of that soft finish and how it doesn't really, there's no burn. There's, you know, I'm not really getting much of the acid at all. It's almost too easy to drink, you know, like, which is a good problem to have. But I mean, you don't really, you know, we were drinking another rosé the other night, and I feel like with each glass I had of that rosé, I knew exactly how much I was drinking because the acidity was really having like a huge effect on kind of how much I could drink of it before I was like, okay, enough of the rosé, let's move on to something else, which happened to be a different bottle of rosé. But anyway, what I like about this is that I'm not getting that. To me, this drinks more like a red wine, where it's almost inviting you to keep drinking more and more. Whereas a lot of the more popular rosés, you're kind of tapped out after 2 or 3 or 4 glasses because of that acidity.
Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so.
Where does that have anything to do with the Grenache grape?
I'm sorry?
Does that have anything to do with the fact that it's, you know, a Grenache? Does that have anything to do with the grape specifically, or is that your technique, or is it a little of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly the Grenache grape does have a little bit more minerality and kind of, I think more of a broad spectrum of flavors when it's made into a rosé. And also, I think that freshness of direct press is really key. I mean, the way a lot of other rosés are made is hearty, dark red grapes are crushed and put into a tank, and immediately when they hit the tank, do they start kind of bleeding some of the juice that hasn't gotten some of that color extraction off yet.
Right.
And they might take a percentage of that juice out of a whole bunch of different tanks, and that just becomes the rosé. It really, you know, it can be delicious, and it really is to benefit the juice and the skins that you leave in the tank. So it could be somewhat of a little bit of an afterthought, but I think that sort of loses focus on the flavors of the wine coming from different varieties, and different acids and different pHs, and all that stuff is kind of crashing all together. Where this was all sort of harvested in the vineyard, and I think it just has a little bit more intent behind it. But again, plenty of those other rosés can be made very, very well. But Yes, I agree with you, Segi. I'm not into those ones that are just so tart that they're just so crisp and so crisp and so crisp. I like them to be really juicy and really refreshing in the mouth because I'm out on the back porch or I'm at the pool or whatever, and having to kind of work through a glass isn't what I'm after. I want it to just kind of be a little more slippery than that.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
Slippery. I love that.
And really, you go through, when you're making rosé, you go through two different processes. So you can either do the direct press like what you did, or you can do like the short maceration, right? So you have
Yeah,
two options of how to really process the grape. What are the
yeah.
advantages do you feel of doing the direct press, and why do you choose to do it that way?
We actually do a little bit of both. I have done some of the saignée method also. Haven't used any of that for the rosé just yet, but there's not to say that I might not. But that those grapes that come in those many weeks later are very, very ripe. And the alcohol on this I think is significant. It's 14.2 or 14.6, something along that, 14.6. Whereas the saignée method would be 3 weeks more of hang time and might be a 15.6. I think that might throw the balance of a delicate rosé like this off a little bit.
Right.
So that's how I've chosen to go with the direct press.
And that's also, part of, this whole process too, is that you really let nature dictate your process too. It's like you can't go in and say, I do things this way and I'm always going to do it this way no matter what. Sometimes, nature dictates your process, right?
I think more often it should than not. I mean, I don't like to force wine into any little hole that it doesn't need to be in. I like to, my wife doesn't think so, but I like to listen more than I do speak. So it really is kind of getting to understand and learn what you have for the year and then making the most of it and respecting where it came from and your style along the way. But first and foremost is not trying to fit something into to the wrong place.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And that's what I love about this. And, again, I don't think there's been an episode where we haven't talked about, the whole idea of everyone we've had on, are, craftsmen at what they do, and it's artisan winemaking, and, everything, every bottle is different, every vintage is different. You've got to react to the grapes. You have to react to the way the growing season is, to the way the weather is, and everything. There's so many variables that you guys have to deal with. I mean, it's really such a fascinating process.
Well, I think it's very, very important to let all of those vintage characteristics shine and come through. I mean, I like to think of myself as a historian through wine, where here's the story of the season. It was wet, it was dry, it was very short and abrupt, it was a long, cool season. All of those create different characteristics and different personalities in a wine. And again, if you are just kind of recipe winemaking and yep, it's the exact same again and again and again every year, I don't think that, first of all, not very fun, but also it doesn't give you the excitement of lining up at one time or another 5 or 6 different wines, different vertical, and thinking about those different seasons that they went through and finding those really unique characteristics of those wines.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a common denominator of some sort because they're coming from the same vineyard, but those vintage characteristics I think are so cool to find. And I think that's what people that are drinking the kind of wines that I'm making are looking for also. I mean, there's a whole lot of great recipe wines out there. There are the Kendall Jacksons and the Rombauers and all that of the world. And thank goodness there are those. Those are kind of the training wheels. Every time you pull those off the shelf, you know exactly what you're going to get. And I'm so glad that those are such great introductions to people into wine. But hopefully they get a little bit bored with that over time and go, all right, I'm looking for some diversity. I'm looking for something that is just a little bit different. and then they sort of grow up and mature a little bit and become hopefully one of my customers.
Absolutely. And DR looked confused there. So DR.
Yeah,
Rombauer?
Rombauer. I'm not familiar with that one. Maybe there's another name that it goes by that might be more familiar.
So it goes by. There's Cougar Juice. There is.
Oh, Rombauer.
Okay, now you got it.
Now I got it. Wait, what was the other one? Cougar Juice.
Danville Crack.
There it is.
Yeah.
So
Tennessee.
Kind of a good segue, Rudy. You're saying these people become your customers. Before we move on to the next one, why don't you let people know where they can find your wine and get some sent to their home so they can try this goodness?
Absolutely. So of this rosé and the Grenache we're gonna make. So the rosé, I made a total of 78 cases of it, which is about as much as the winery next door spilled today. But that's how much we made. So the only way to find it is directly from our website. We're 100% direct. It is zuidemawines.com. That's spelled ZUIDEMA wines.com. So yeah, we have a couple vintages. Actually, I think we're sold out of the 15. We have a vintage of the red Grenache, and the rosé is available there. The rosé is $22. I think it's a pretty good value for that. We didn't want to have to work too hard at selling wine, so we thought we'd just price it right so that it just kind of flies out the door. And of those 76 cases, I think we've already drank 20, so you should probably jump on this pretty quickly.
and as people, and all of us, the four of us consume wine, and we know pricing. You said this was 20, 22, 25. What did you say it was?
$22 for the rosé.
That is for the quality of that wine. That is, you're giving it away. And if people are watching and they're saying, hey, listen, there's, I have a need for some rosé in my wine cellar, or, I'm going to have, a family member or two over, social distancing, of course. I need some wine. That is an incredible price point. I'm telling you, the wine is stunning.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it's, again, I believe that wine should be fun and frivolous and should be really easy and not too thought-provoking to pull a cork. If it's priced right and over delivers, then nobody feels guilty about cracking one open, or another one, or another one.
Exactly. What was the first year for Zuidema wine?
2014.
14,
was
right?
our very first crop that we made, and that was our first Grenache Noir. And then 2019 is the very first rosé. So we got a few more vintages of red than we do the rosé, but it's working out really, really fun together. A real nice compliment. I'm always, I'm making the wine and I'm having a great time with it, but seeing that these two different wines are coming off of the same plants every year, it's just mind-boggling. It is so cool that you can make these two different wines.
The nose on these are, obviously they're the same vines, but I mean, just two completely different wines. I mean, this has a beautiful aromatic nose on it. There's a lot going on here.
Well, again, with all those those different ripenesses that are going on in those canopies, we get a little bit of very beautiful ripe flavors, a little bit of tobacco, a little bit of mint, some nice earthy characters, some of the slightly less ripe clusters that are, again, tucked under those canopies. Those kind of bring us a little bit more of the bright, fresh acid, the cranberry, some of the Bing cherry and strawberry flavors kind of in the mid palate. And I love how all of that is kind of intermingled with some really cool spicy notes. Yeah. There's almost like some sort of a cinnamon, almost like a cherry cobbler kind of pie crust, all that stuff is going on.
Yeah, that
Cherry cobbler is a great call.
Yeah.
I'm getting those. I'm definitely getting prominently those baking spices. Stay
Yeah.
with me, Brits. White pepper.
Yeah, I love it.
Those baking spices are there. I'm getting like for some reason I'm getting a little bit like a slight note of black licorice on there too,
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
that sort of
Mhm.
star anise.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bananas, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So the general sort of process for the Grenache is almost like the way I make Pinot Noir. So these clusters are their whole cluster harvested. They do go through destemming and sorting, and then I do these in an open top tank. I want there to kind of just not be such a perfectly controlled environment for this wine. So the wine goes into an open top stainless steel tank. And once it arrives in the tank, I chill it down to 34, 35 degrees and get it very, very cold and let it just sort of stew in its own skins and kind of grape soup for 5 or 6 days. I think a lot of the color extraction all happens at this time. And not any of the seed extraction is happening at this time. So I want to get as much color out of these skins as I can. It's a fair colored grape. It's certainly not a Cabernet Dark, but it's certainly not Pinot Noir Light either. But it's getting as much of this color out during this cold extraction time is key for me. So after these 5 or 6 days of cold soaking, I turn the refrigeration off and let this kind of over the course of the next couple of days naturally warm up. Somewhere along that process, when it starts to hit 50, 55 degrees, some of the native yeast cells that have come in with the grapes start to become active and start fermentation all by itself. So it starts off with all wild and native yeast. I keep the fermentation very, very cool, almost like a white wine, around 55 to 65 degrees. So it's a very long and slow and cool fermentation process. And about 3/4 of the way, sometimes even 2/3 of the way along fermentation, do some of these sort of big seed bitternesses or those kind of harder tannins start to come out, and I will separate the skins and the seeds from the half wine, half juice then, long before fermentation is over, and let the rest of it happen without the presence of skin and seeds. I found over the years that when the temperature comes up, even to those 60, 65 degrees, but that presence of alcohol is there, that alcohol really breaks down those seeds, and some of the kind of, again, harder kind of extraction, harder tannins come out. And while I like a little bit of rusticity, those can sometimes be a little bit too chunky for me. So kind of, again, a conservative approach to making this wine. I think that really, again, lets some of those really fun, subtle flavors that we were just mentioning there really come through. And if there's too much earthiness and too much sort of girth in this wine, it might mask some of those otherwise very subtle and very intimate flavors.
So that's quite the process. I mean, how did you settle on that process? Just, years and years of trial and error and studying kind of different methods. I mean, I don't even know, how would you even like end up with, all right, well, let me leave it without a lid for X amount of days for some heat to come in. How do you get there?
Well, it was starting off by, I don't know what I'm doing with Grenache. So let me be as absolutely conservative as I possibly can be. You can always add more salt to the soup. You can always be more aggressive down the road, but let's be extremely soft-handed with this. And so through that method, I made a bigger wine than I thought I was gonna make. And so it was really lucky to kind of be, I don't know, somewhat smart and think about that method. And that became the way to go every time. It's varied a little bit from year to year. Again, I want to I want to maximize the characteristics and the personalities of every year. So we've been able to be slightly more aggressive, like with this 2016. Got to get a little riper, has a little bit bigger tannins, because I think the fruit and the juice and the core of this wine is a little bit more pleasant. So I want to make sure that I don't leave anything on the table and it has structure to match. But it was very lucky to kind of learn that it is a soft-handed sort of style that really makes, to me, exciting Grenache.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with this, with a Grenache. But the first thing that I noticed when I poured it into the glass was it does have the color and, you know, does sort of look a little bit like a Pinot, right? It's light, it's a lighter, it's got a nice lighter color like a Pinot.
Yeah.
So it's fair that you talk about that, the production in that way. Is that typical of this type of grape?
It's very typical of this grape, but unlike Pinot Noir, it has very much pronounced tannins.
Oh yeah, the
Pinot
tannins
Noir
are right away.
Feel like, you know, this is what I love about Grenache, and actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do Grenache was because it's such a simple sort of classic wine. I mean, this is the wine that has villages of France and Italy all over the place living. I mean, they all have Grenache. It's kind of like the peasant local wine. It's, you take your jug down to the end of the street and you have the guy refill it out of the vat. I mean, it's just that kind of provincial, really rustic old style that goes with so many different foods. I mean, from fresh tomatoes and mozzarella and salads all the way through to lamb shank and polenta on the other season. It really just goes with so much stuff. You know, I make Cabernet for most of my other clients, actually all of my other clients, and they really focus on that as that being sort of their prize. But I wanted to make something for myself that was so much more fun than that. That was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday wine, not so much a special occasion, got to make a special meal with it. You know, we can drink this standing up with leftover pizza on the way to baseball practice and love it.
I'm really, really loving the tannins on this. I mean, these are really, really nice and present. I mean, this is, yeah.
So
Yeah,
Are you muted, Britt?
Go ahead, Dave.
yeah. So what I love about both of these wines is there is a finesse to both of them, and I'm sure you guys know what I mean by that. You know, winemaking, you know, is an art. It's nuanced, and you can just tell by drinking this. This isn't factory made. This is every step thought through. You know, there's just a real beauty in drinking this. The mouthfeel, there's just the whole thing is just really, really unique and nuanced. Dude, I mean, it's an art what you do. I mean, you're highly skilled at what you do. And you can tell if you drink these wines and you're not like, hey, this dude is is not a magician, then you don't know what you're talking about. Like, seriously, it's really, really incredible stuff.
Well, thank you again. Those are such kind words. I really appreciate it. I have my hats off to the farmers and all of the crews that are out there working on these vines, that are manicuring them and supporting them. The soil,
letting them grow wild all over the place.
Just popping all over the place. No, I mean, there's so much more that goes into it. I mean, from the beginning of bud break all the way till, I mean, those are the real magicians out there. I think taking the wine and just sort of allowing it to become what it is and respecting it for what it is what I'm really all about. You know, for me, this is kind of how I like to drink wine. This is just a fun, frivolous, easygoing wine, an everyday kind of wine, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. You know, I
I think
love
this
how
is,
it's not so thick. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I'm having internet issues, so if I'm breaking up,
No
I
worries.
apologize. But I think this is a wine that you can take this wine to a party, right? And you know, sometimes have, wine drinkers tend to a lot of times stick with what they know and what they like. And this would be something that you could take and either stump people on what it is or really open up people's minds. Because I think, Pinot drinkers will find something they like in this. I think cab drinkers, something they like in this. This would be fun to take to a party and, flex your wine knowledge a little bit.
Well, it's usually one of the first ones gone, and that's the biggest compliment any winemaker could ever ask for.
I really want to pair this with a steak au poivre. I feel like the peppercorn and the sauce with the
Sure.
steak and this wine with the tannins. Oh man, that's a good combo. See if I can order that on DoorDash.
That's a great call, Sag. I totally agree with that. I mean, this would be great with any steak, right? Any preparation of a steak. We were talking about steak with a nice soy garlic marinade. That'd be great with this too. Any steak preparation, I think, would be good with this. But I think this would almost anything, like
Absolutely.
you said, like a nice, like a tomato salad kind of a thing, like all kinds of things. Or you could just pop this and drink it and enjoy it while you're making dinner. So there's a lot of options, I think, with this one. It's really great.
All right,
Yeah.
Rudy,
And this time of year, we oftentimes put one of these in the fridge. It's warm out, and so kind of it starts off a little bit cool, and as it warms up, it becomes it flowers a little bit. But for summertime drinking, with definitely a little bit of chill is nice with this.
I was just gonna say this would probably be really solid chilled, and as it warms up, you get more of that spice coming through, and that mouthfeel. But yeah, almost similar to like a Beaujolais, where it's like a little chill is not a problem. Like serve
Right.
a little colder than room temperature. But yeah, like DR, I don't have a ton of experience with Grenache, but most of my experience with Grenache is in the rosé department, which unfortunately I'm a bit of a degenerate in. But
Right.
this is really nice. I mean, like DR was saying, the cab drinkers are gonna love the tannins and the big bold mouthfeel. I mean, this is like full palate, front, middle, top, back. All it hits you everywhere.
Yeah.
And then finishes real subtle, real nice, really it's almost calculated, and that's along the lines of those Burgundian Pinots. So like DR said, you take this to a party, throw it in a brown bag so no one can see what it is, and people probably wouldn't really know how to identify.
Right. That is fun. I mean, again, it is sort of this cross between kind of a rustic old world wine and something from California. The tannins, again, are a little bit more chunky and a little bit less polished than many other wines. But then there's that juicy quality that kind of just keeps coming and coming and keeps it refreshing. That throws people for a little bit of a loop.
Totally. Yeah, it is refreshing. And so I pulled this out of the wine fridge and opened it about 10 minutes before we got on the call. So it was a little bit chilled when we keep our wine fridge a little bit on the colder side, probably 50 degrees.
Yeah, perfect.
So it was a little bit colder than I think, you would expect maybe to drink a cab. But it's really going well today. It's a hot day here in Chicago, low humidity. We got the windows open, nice breeze. This is going very, very well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It's beautiful. Hey, Rudy, three questions for you. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
all right. First question. Favorite wine you have ever made?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, I would have to say that is a little. There's a toss up. There's two that are in there. Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the most challenging and successful wines I made was the 2011 Red Cap Cabernet. 2011 was a really difficult year here in California, and we had to really get creative, and it was using tools that I had never used before, and trying things that I had never tried before, and that wine is one of the most sensational wines now that I have ever tried. We lined up a vertical just recently of 2008 to 2016, and it was so clearly the champion in that whole vertical. There's a real kind of an older world flavor to it. It was a cool year, lots of rain and issues that France deals with all the time, but not so much us. But that wine is absolutely spectacular. Um, and then the other one I would have to say is one that I just put in the bottle about 2 months ago, and it's a white wine, and it is the Shady Estate 2018 Platinum Blanc Semillon. This wine is electrifying with its acid, and the continuation of the flavors and the length and the development of this wine are just absolutely unreal. And I made it the same way I made the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all those. But this one just hits so much with this amazing balance between those lees development in neutral oak, the vibrancy of the acid, the creaminess of the texture, everything just crushed it.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. Now, the second question is, what is your favorite wine that you've had recently that you didn't make?
Oh, that's another awesome question. I just had the Realm Cellars, the Bard, 2014. It's a common. It's got a few different varieties in it from a few different vineyards. But the way Benoit Toquet put this wine together, the aromatics and how they weave perfectly into the core mid palate, how they linger and are intense, but then with finesse, finish with such grace and beauty in this young, very, very much Bordeaux wine, was just sensational. I mean, that guy is just a master at what he's doing. He's been working with Realm for a long time, and it was a magnificent night, that's for sure.
I haven't had this, but you sold me right there. So that's I'm gonna have to find that. And then the last question is, if you weren't making wine, what would you do?
Well, if I could make every 3 foot putt, I would love to be on the pro tour. um, but that's not going to happen. If I was not making wine, I would love to do, photography or graphic design. I would love to do kind of even like sports equipment design, do the undersides, top sides of snowboards and graphics on bike frames and some other cool stuff like that. But actually, there was a time in college I was kind of working towards that, and it turns out that I wasn't that good at it either. So I sort of didn't have much of a choice but to find wine.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm
We're
very
all
glad you did.
Yeah, I think that's a fun place for us to wrap up, because we're glad you found wine. We're glad we got to try these wines. We had posted in the comments where everybody can get the wines from the Zuidema website. Go check out these wines; they're incredible. The thing about us is we don't BS. One, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna bring anybody on, and we as the three of us aren't gonna bring anybody on whose wines we know aren't great. But we're not gonna go in and sell anybody a bill of goods. If we're hyping something up, it's because it's really good. I encourage everybody to check this out, because we're still coming out of COVID, and all of these wineries are family owned. Rudy and his wife, you guys do everything, I would assume, for your winery.
Yep.
And they need our
Absolutely.
support. So I appreciate you being on here, letting us try the wines, letting us talk about them. It was a pleasure, man.
And to Britz's point there, like,
for me too.
I was just going to say quickly that we're not that good at actors. There have been a couple of episodes where we do like sort of dealer's choice, or we go do like grocery store buys, and there have been a couple that were like, yeah, this wine is, you could put it in the fridge and it would be good. So you could tell, like, if we're not into a wine, yeah, it's pretty clear. But this one and these wines today have been fantastic. I highly recommend people checking out the website, supporting a small business, and then enjoying some of this wine. When things lift, maybe quarantine in your backyard. Doesn't matter. It's going to be great.
And honestly, get these wines while they're still super underpriced.
Yeah, right? Totally.
I feel like you could add another $20 to the rosé and at least another 25 to the Grenache. But while they're priced so low, I mean, load up. I mean, this is good stuff to load up on, because you will be the standout. Like, everyone can go and find their the standard wines that people like to have in their cellars for I'm not talking about the really, really dynamic collectors. I'm talking about your general person that has a little bit of a collection. They're going to have, the standard stuff that you can find at a nicer, wine shop. But this is the kind of stuff that will separate you. The stuff that come from little boutique, craftly made, like it's art in a bottle, like Fritz was saying. This is the stuff that sets you apart, because you can go and buy one of those bigger wineries that sell $150, $200 bottles of wine. You can buy those and they're great and everything, but you want something unique that people can't just go to the store and buy, and really have to seek out, and that's kind of what our business is modeled after. And that's why we love highlighting these wineries and winemakers that kind of are in the same world as us and align in the same way like that.
Thank you so much. Those are the sort of comments that make me noodle over every detail and every little bit of attention I can put into these wines, because that is worth it to me, and to hear that it's worth it to other people is the music to my ears. So I want to thank you guys all very, very much for your time this afternoon.
Cheers.
Thanks for helping me out and giving me some exposure, and hopefully I'll meet a ton more awesome people like y'all, and definitely try and come out to LA for that LMU Classic, and let's clink glasses in person one of these days, shall we?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Man.
I look forward to it.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Right.
We'll be seeing
Cheers.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
Yeah, you too.